Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having us today, for joining us today. My name is Juan Carlos Brando, and for me, it's a pleasure to talk to all of you today with one of the attorneys in the law firm of Margaret W. Wong and Associates. To me, it's an honor to have the attorney Francis Fungsang one more time in the show today. And if you have any questions related to, I would say, any kind of immigration case, just send your question. The answer is going to be absolutely free with the attorney Francis Function today. So let's start. Thank you so much, attorney Francis. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much. And well, one of the trending topics that people are talking right now is about what's going on at the southern border, because that also became one of the topics in the last debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. So, is there gonna change something in the southern border? Because some people still want to come and surrender at the border, but now they are not being let into the United States of America.
Well, so what's happening at the southern border? So earlier this summer, the Biden administration issued new rules to make it more difficult to apply for asylum. For example, if you enter the United States illegally uh, by a certain time, then you're not eligible for asylum unless you meet certain exceptions. For example, if it was really dangerous situation for you to be escaping from, or if you are a minor or a victim of trafficking. So certain exceptions, but pretty much if you entered the United States illegally more recently, you're not eligible for asylum. Now, the goal of this is to prevent people from entering illegally, but also to shift people to use that CBP1 app, where you can actually make an appointment at the border to be allowed to be interviewed and to have the opportunity to enter the United States and processed at the border.
Okay, that's interesting. And now we have another. We have the first question today, but it's interesting that now even the Democrat Party and the Republican Party are talking about building a wall in the southern border. So, is this going to affect the immigration somehow? And I know this is politics, but it's just immigration has become the trending topics for the politics in the last 3 or 4 elections. So, um, is this really going to happen? And what are people going to do if this really happens?
Well, I mean, for the most part, I think this has to do with politics and the election coming up in November, which is 1 month from now. And so the border and border security is a big issue for a lot of people. The general public wants to make sure that there isn't increased crime or increased drug trafficking coming across the border. And there's also a lot of incorrect facts being thrown around about criminals crossing the border freely, coming into the United States, and all of that. And so I think it's mostly just politics at this point, but it also shows how concerned people are about security in general, whether it's just crime in their neighborhoods and also crime potentially coming across the border, whether it's true or not. Okay. Now, an actual wall probably isn't going to stop anything because the wall can't necessarily cross all of the southern United States. People will find a way to cross if they're trying to escape from harmful situations. But for now, it's mostly a symbol being used by people to show, well, we're doing something about border security.
And what about the asylum applications? Because one of the things that were spoken a couple of months ago was the asylum applications were not going to be accepted in the southern border if people were trying to come in and try to apply for a defensive asylum at the border. Is this something that came up in the immigration law, or it's something that they just spoke about it but never happened?
Well, that's what's really disappointing about the current administration by making it more difficult to apply for asylum, that's one of the basic humanitarian rights as part of the United Nations, the ability to apply for asylum for protection from persecution. So it's not just the United States, other countries allow people to apply for asylum as well. So the Trump administration based its asylum restrictions on the COVID-19 pandemic. We have to protect from COVID-19, so we're restricting the border. And now it's based on the border security. And so the question is, can people apply for asylum? But in order to apply for asylum, you have to be physically in the United States to apply, okay, whether it's affirmatively or defensively. So if you aren't being allowed into the United States, you can't actually apply.
Okay, thank you very much. And how long are taking the cases for an asylum, for example, from the day of application until the day that you go to court? How long is it taking at the moment?
Well, it also depends on the asylum office's priorities. If you had just recently come into the more recent you come in, those are the higher priorities to be scheduled for an interview. We've seen people scheduled for an interview within a few months. But if you applied for asylum even 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, those people are still waiting for their interviews because of all the resources devoted to recent entrants at the border.
Okay, that's interesting. And thank you so much, Attorney Francis, for clarifying all of these questions. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask it through our show today, because the Attorney Francis Fungson has an answer for you. Also, you can call the phone number 216-279-3984 and talk to the attorneys in the law firm of Margaret W. Wong & Associates, and they will give you an answer. You can make your appointment in your city, 7 offices in 7 cities of the United States: Atlanta, Chicago, Cleveland, Columbus, Nashville, New York, and Raleigh, North Carolina are the cities that the law firm has offices, but you can call only one phone number, 216-279-3984, and they will help you out to set up your appointment with the attorney Margaret W. Wong. We have the first question coming in, and this says, "Hi, when you go out for a consular interview to get a green card through husband, what could happen if you have a prior removal order?"
Okay, so if you're married to a U.S. citizen, you can apply for your green card based on that marriage. But if you came into the United States illegally across the border, usually you cannot apply for the green card with immigration here in the United States. You would have to leave the United States to go to an interview at the U.S. Embassy in your home country. Now, what if you were illegally here in the United States, or if you had a prior removal order with immigration here in the United States? If you leave and you've been illegally here more than 1 year, you trigger what's called a 10-year bar. You can't come back to the United States for 10 years. If you have a prior removal order and then you leave, you've just deported yourself, you also can't come back for 10 years. And that means before you leave for your interview, or before you even schedule that interview, you need to apply for 2 different types of waivers. Number 1 is the I-212 waiver, which forgives the deportation order. And number 2, the I-601A waiver, which forgives the illegal time in the United States and forgives that 10-year bar. So first you apply for the 212, and if that's approved, you apply for the I-601A, and if that's approved, then you schedule the interview at the U.S. Embassy.
Thank you so much, Attorney Francis. Well, there you have an answer, very clear, and I hope very helpful for you. Don't forget the phone number is 216-279-3984, 216-279-3984. Hi, Attorney. I am a psychologist, graduated in Chile. Now I live in Spain. I would like to move legally to live in the United States and work legally as a psychologist. What would be the best way to do it? I have my B2 visa, but I want to do everything 100% legal.
Okay, so when we talk about coming to the United States legally, there's 2 different options. One is to come on a temporary visa, for example, a work visa, and the other way is to come on the green card or permanent residency or the immigrant visa. More quickly is going to be the temporary visa. And usually for that, you would need a sponsor, an employer filing a work petition for you to come to the United States. Okay, the most common one is the H-1B. But the problem is that to qualify for the H-1B, you need an employer to file the petition for you. And right now, there are more applicants than available numbers, so there's a lottery process. The H-1B lottery is held every March. And if you get selected in April, then the employer can file the petition for you and you can come in October. Okay. If you're able to get a job from a college or university or a nonprofit, then it's possible for you to skip the lottery and apply for the H-1B at any time. But you do need a job offer from an employer. And that's the most common type of work visa. Now, you would not be able to just come into the United States on your B2 visa because that allows you to visit for up to 6 months, but you would need more than 6 months to go through the H-1B lottery. Okay. Now, if you have an employer in the United States willing to sponsor you for the green card, that process will take about 3 years. But you can actually, when you come to the United States, you would have your permanent residency. You would still need to find a US employer willing to sponsor you for the green card. Unfortunately, as a psychologist, you wouldn't be able to sponsor yourself unless you would qualify for what's called a national interest waiver, or you are a person of what's called extraordinary ability, which means that you have published papers in journals, or you've been mentioned in the newspaper, or you've been asked to judge other people's work. So different ways to show that you've been recognized for your work in the field.
Thank you so much, Attorney Francis. Very clear your answer. But if you need more information and to give you a more specific answer related to your case, you can call the phone number 216-279-3984. Talk to the attorneys in the law firm of Margaret W. Wong, and you will have a better point of view if they can check up your documents and everything you have. So if you are out of the United States, you can do the interview over the phone or over a video call, and they can help you out with your immigration case. Phone number 216-279-3984, 216-279-3984. Next question is, I was victim of racism at my job. They fired me and took me out of the factory, pushing me out of the building and pointing at me with a firearm. That was only because I am brown skin. What can I apply for?
Okay. So recently there was some new policies that started between the Immigration Service and the Department of Labor to help people who experience what you've experienced, or unfair labor practices, or anything that happened at the work site, in order to help them stay in the United States and to apply for a work permit. And that's called deferred action. Okay. If you report what happened to you to the Department of Labor and you request deferred action through that complaint, then it's possible for you to get either a 1-year or 2-year work permit to allow you to stay in the United States for that period. Now, it's not a permanent solution, but at least it will help you right now. So I would recommend that you talk to a lawyer about this procedure, and then we can see if we can help you. Okay. Another type of visa is called the U visa, which is for victims of certain crimes. Now, racism is not on the list, but if we can get a better idea about your situation, we can see if it's potentially there for a U visa. But U visas, you have to show that you are willing to help law enforcement because you are a victim of a certain crime, racism by itself is not serious enough, unfortunately.
Thank you so much, Attorney Francis. Don't forget, the offices of the attorney Margaret W. Wong and Associates have 7 offices across the United States of America, and you can talk to any of the 15 attorneys that are working in the law firm. Also, they have over 60 people working for you and for your immigration case. So don't forget that the phone number is 216-279-3984. 216-279-3984. They have specialized attorneys in different areas of the law, and it could be work-based application, family-based applications, or depending on your situation, you can have another kind of case. But you need to talk to the attorneys. So the phone number is 216-279-3984. Next question says, I am from Nicaragua, found a sponsor to bring my wife over the humanitarian parole. Then they suspended the parole. Now I'm kind of limbo. I don't know if I need to wait or apply again.
Okay. So there was a humanitarian parole program coming from certain countries. Okay. Now, the Immigration Service suspended the program a few months ago because they had to investigate, because they saw that a small number of sponsors were actually sponsoring a large number of people. So they wanted to make sure there was no fraud. The good news is a few weeks ago, the Immigration Service confirmed that they have restarted this parole program. So if you have already applied, you do not have to reapply unless it's denied. But if you have not applied yet, then you should apply now.
Okay, thank you so much, Attorney Francis. And yeah, so what I've heard about this is they need to reapply again with all the information to start a new application. Is that
Well, no. If you've already applied before and you were not denied, that application is not canceled. It was just put on hold. So now they resume the processing because the program has started up again. They did not cancel the entire program. They just put it on hold temporarily.
oh, okay, so now it's back on.
Yes.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you so much for clarifying. Don't forget, the phone number is 216-279-3984. 216-279-3984. And that's one of the problems, Attorney Francis, that some people just mess up the system. I don't know if that makes sense. They get a chance to do something and then they mess it up because they bring corruption into it, and that corruption is not coming from the government. That corruption is coming from people trying to play around the government and to mess around the government, and then when they find out, they just block it or they just put it on hold because of us, not because of them. It's because we don't understand how to do the good thing when they allow us to do it. It's like my dad would say, I'll let you go out until 10 p.m. If you come after 10 p.m., I won't let you go out anymore. So I would come at 11. I knew there was no more permit to go out with my friends. It's just an example. I don't know if that happened to you as well.
Well, I have this situation here. So in order to qualify for these parole programs, whether it's Ukraine, Venezuela, Nicaragua, you need a financial sponsor, not a financial sponsor to submit the application for you. And that financial sponsor has to be a US citizen or a green card holder or asylee or somebody with valid immigration status. Now, maybe somebody who is illegally here wants to bring their family to the United States with this parole program, but maybe they don't know or have a family member or a very close friend who has immigration status. So they end up asking friends and family, hey, do you know anybody who can help me out? And unfortunately, the Immigration Service found that a small number of sponsors were signing the paperwork for a large number of people. So all these people kept going to the same sponsors, and the Immigration Service had to investigate to make sure it's legitimate.
And they were making a lot of money, because what I've heard is that they were charging between $3,000 and $4,000 to $5,000 just to become a sponsor. So basically, that's illegal. It's not something that you should do, right?
Right? That's not the way it's supposed to work. I mean, the sponsor is supposed to be somebody who ensures that the person coming to the United States can actually support themselves or be supported and not have to rely on the government. But paying a sponsor isn't the way it's supposed to work.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Attorney Francis. And let's go ahead and read the next question. And it says, can I file a lawsuit against my employer if he didn't fulfill what he promised when I filed my temporary work visa, or at least change employer?
Okay. So a lot of work visas, for example, the H-1B or the H-2, those visas, the employer has to promise to pay a certain salary to the worker, and that's called the prevailing wage. The employer signs the paperwork as part of the work visa application to promise to pay the prevailing wage to make sure they're not taking advantage of foreign workers, and also to make sure that that U.S. workers aren't being compromised. Okay. Now, if you actually come to the United States, you start working for that employer as was petitioned or sponsored, but then the employer isn't paying you what they're supposed to be, then technically you are able to complain to the Department of Labor to ask for back wages, because you are supposed to be paid a certain amount. If you are not paid that amount, you can ask for the difference in pay, and the Department of Labor will force that employer to pay those back wages. Now, we talked about before about the other person who wanted to sue the employer because of racism, or how that'll help. So you can also ask for protection from the Department of Labor in the form of what's called deferred action, which allows you to stay here in the United States temporarily and apply for a work permit. But that doesn't actually preserve your H-1B or your H-2 visa status. What you could do is transfer to another employer, but that new employer has to file a new petition on your behalf. If it's an H-1B, it's pretty simple. You find a new employer, they file a new petition on your behalf to transfer from one to the other. But the H-2 has to go through a lot of paperwork. It might not be as easy to just change employers, okay? Also, once you lose your job, usually you have a 60-day grace period in order to either leave the United States, to change employers, or to change your status. If you were a victim of your employer or something happened, then the Immigration Service has the discretion to extend that 60-day grace period, because let's say it takes you longer than 60 days to find a new job, and maybe it takes you 90 days. Well, if you explain what happened to the employer, then it's possible that the Immigration Service will forgive that extra time and allow you to change employers, even though you filed after the grace period. Okay. So yes, you can file a lawsuit, but that does not necessarily guarantee that you can keep your status, because you need a new employer. But either you can apply for deferred action, or you can find a new employer later so you can transfer your visa to that employer.
Okay, thank you very much, Attorney Francis. Don't forget, the phone number is 216-279-3984, 216-279-3984. This question says, hi, Attorney, thank you so much for this show. I came to the U.S. from Ecuador when I married to my U.S. husband. My daughters came with me, and I had a baby. My mom doesn't have a visa, and I would like to bring her, but I don't work. Can I file for my mom and my husband be the co-sponsor, even if I don't work at all, because he provides everything at home?
Okay, so green card holders cannot file a petition for their parents. You have to be a US citizen in order to file the petition for your parent. That means that if you came to the United States and got your green card based on marriage, if you are living with and together with a US citizen for 3 years, then you can apply for US citizenship and not have to wait the usual 5 years. Most people have to wait 5 years, but after 3 years of having a green card and married and living with a US citizen, you can apply for US citizenship. After you become a US citizen, then immediately you can file a petition for your mom or your dad or both. Okay, so you already applied for US citizenship, great. If it's approved, then that same day you can file the I-130 for your mom. Now, once the I-130 is approved, then you have to submit the financial paperwork to the National Visa Center or the State Department to process her visa. If you still have to sign the form I-864, that's the financial support form, but if you don't make enough money, then your husband, who is a US citizen, can be included with your I-864 because he's part of your household. So you can combine the income on the I-864, and then your income combined can be used to support your mother.
Again, that's interesting. And what about these people that they have their parents overseas and they have a green card or they have a U.S. citizen? Well, let's say people that are U.S. citizens, but then when they want to file for the parents, they don't want to come to live in the United States. You know, older people don't want to move from their home countries. How difficult is to get a B2 visa for parents to come to the U.S. Compared to getting a green card for them?
Well, it can be more difficult to get the B2, especially from countries where a lot of people want to come to the United States. The embassy wants to make sure that the person isn't going to overstay in the United States or work in the United States or be here to take care of the babies in the United States. So a lot of times these B2 visas are denied. So the only way that the parents can come is on the green card, even if they don't want to stay permanently. Well, it's a 2-year process minimum for the parents to get to the United States usually. So they might as well try to apply for the B2, the visitor visa, at the embassy and see if that works out.
Okay, our time is up for today. Attorney Francis, thank you so much for all of your very clear answers in each of the questions that our people send us today in this show. So thank you one more time, and I'll see you soon.
All right, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. And for everybody who has joined us today, don't forget, the phone number is 216-279-3984. You can call the attorneys or you can visit one of the offices in your city: Atlanta, Chicago, Cleveland, Columbus, Nashville, New York, or Raleigh, North Carolina. And the phone number is just 216-279-3984. You can talk to the attorneys. You can talk to the attorney, Margaret W. Wong, and then you can have access to all the information with all the people that are working with you. Also visiting imwong.com. imwong.com is the website that you can visit and see all of the questions that you have an answer in the website of the attorney Margaret W. Wong. So thank you so much one more time. My name is Juan Carlos Brandon. It has been an honor to host this show today with a Q&A session with the attorney Francis Fonsan. Thank you so much and have a good time.